The collective American memories of the Second World War, created by Hollywood movies in the 1940s, and the prevailing myths of the greatest generation some 50 years later, dismiss the complex realities of war as described by three veterans who offer contrary views on such issues as unity, the wounded, and combat. Americans coming together in a united equal front during the war is a popular myth of the greatest generation culture. Quartermaster Sergeant Lamont Alexander, who found himself a part of a Jim Crow army, describes the contradictions between America's fight for liberty overseas while African Americans were denied equal rights within their own country. He explains how Black soldiers were discriminated against when it came to training, equipment, liberty passes, and other aspects of the military that brought constant reminders to African Americans of their inferior status.
The Black soldiers did not have ammunition, no ammunition. You go out to fire on the range, and they say, ready, aim, fire. You go click, 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 not a sound. No ammunition. And it wasn't until about 1943 we began to issue ammunition to the Black soldiers. It was scary. Black person, we could not go into Louisville until we kind of broke it up, because the sergeant, who was a Kentuckian, he would get dressed on Saturday, Friday night, going into town, leave us out there on the post. So one time we said, we're going to stop this. So what we did, he got dressed, going to post, going to Louisville. So we locked his door, locked him in there, put a guard by the door, and he stayed there the whole weekend. So the next weekend, they started giving us passes. It was all discrimination.
The Greatest Generation myth owes much to motion pictures made in the 1940s and early 1950s. Hollywood depicted war nurses in clean white uniforms mending wounded soldiers back to health. Army Air Corps Technical Sergeant Ruth Perry treated returning veterans suffering from psychological trauma at an overcrowded, understaffed Army base that looked nothing like the clean, orderly military hospitals depicted in Hollywood movies.
And the base I was on was a convalescent base. We had 2,000 soldiers that had been sent back from the front lines. That it was a case they had to get them off from the front lines or they would crack up completely. In a 400-bed hospital for our patients. And though there was only about 200 of us, that was permanent party. So it was very, very unmilitary-like. And we worked 7 days a week, because the important part at that time for these people was to make them forget the military part. We tried to make it as comfortable for them as we could.
Hollywood movies add to the American myth by romanticizing the glory of combat and depicting soldiers as patriotic and brave men sacrificing their lives for liberty. Contrary to that belief, a vast majority of soldiers fought simply to survive and to care for their buddies. Marine Sergeant Henry Androwski said the reality of combat is much different than what movies depict. He described the arbitrary and random events of war and recalls the wounds he received in one of the Pacific's most horrific battles.
And I joined the 1st Marine Division on Guadalcanal in November. I landed on Guadalcanal. Even the day I arrived, we had an air raid. I was aboard the President Adams troop transport, and we were in a convoy of about 20 ships. About 18 Japanese torpedo planes came in. They were deck level. I could see the pilots in the plane, and I was watching our Navy shoot them down. Started one by one, they started hitting the water in flames. I think one of our ships was hit. One of our cruisers stopped the torpedo, kept it from hitting the troop transport. That was my introduction to war. The first day, we made the landing on Cape Gloucester, New Britain. It rained for 23 days without stopping, with no relief. We didn't have anything dry. They'd light a cigarette, and the whole battalion would take a light off the guy that had a light on his cigarette. It was really a wet battle. We lived in a swamp about a week. The swamp was about 3 feet deep, and in order to sleep in the swamp, you had to fill up sandbags and put them onto the roots of a tree to get out of the water. I remember the biggest battle we had in Cape Gloucester, New Britain. I saw my best buddy get killed that day, Mike Garrity. He ran up to pick up a guy that had just been killed, Mo Holder. He picked him up, he looked at me, shook his head, and fell drop dead. He got hit in the head. And we lost a lot of people that day. I found a bunch of Japanese socks, and they were wet, but at least they were clean. And I would change socks. I'd have to cut the old ones off because your skin would come off with the socks. And we made the landing at Peleliu, which was, in my opinion, the most ferocious thing I've ever been in. I was a corporal then, and I'm hollering, spread out, don't bunch up. We had about 13 guys on that. But everybody seemed to want to go out one side of the boat. So I and about 4 guys jumped out the other side, the left side, and the right side was kind of bunched up. And a machine gun opened up on us in the water, and they aimed at this side that had all them people on it. And it cut down just about everybody that was on that left side of the tank. I don't think any of them made it ashore. And I don't know what I hit, but the entire tree and all blew up. It knocked people out that were 15 feet away from it, and I was right standing on top of it. And when the smoke lifted, I was still standing there, and I had shrapnel in my face and arms and chest. My leggings were burning because some of the metal didn't go into the skin, clung to the outside of it and burned. As I was ripping my leggings off, trying to pour water on my legs, and the corpsman come up and put an evacuation tag on me. And there were 2 other guys got hit, and the 3 of us were trying to make it back to the aid station together. I was not in a good frame of mind. Concussion, had blood coming out of my nose and ears and every place, and I was sitting on a parapet. Another mortar came in and hit a tree, and a piece of the tree broke off from the explosion, ripped it right off and hit me in the back and threw me about 30 feet. And then I was paralyzed from there on out. They had to carry me the rest of the way. And I lay there, I thought I was dying, and I thought, my God, And they carried me and told me I'd be on the next Amtrak out go back aboard ship.
These lived experiences expose the complexities of war that go far beyond what has been mythologized on such issues as unity, the wounded, and combat.